Hey guys, tonight we're doing something different. We're going back to Belfast, Ireland, between 1909 and 1912 to experience what it was really like to build the Titanic. Not as a passenger, not as an officer, but as one of the thousands of working men who shaped every rivet, every plate, every beam of what would become the most famous ship in history. If you actually enjoy this kind of thing, maybe give it a like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Are you in bed already? Or maybe just settling in for the night? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, and let's drift back in time. You wake to the sound of iron hammers echoing across the Lagan River. It's still dark outside your small row house in East Belfast, but the familiar rhythm has already begun at Harland and Wolff. The sound carries on the morning mist, metal against metal, steady as a heartbeat. You lie there for a moment, feeling the weight of another day settling on your shoulders like a heavy coat. Your name is called from downstairs. Tea's ready, the same breakfast you've had for 3 years now since you started at the yard. Bread, butter if you're lucky, and tea strong enough to wake the dead. You dress in the same clothes you wore yesterday, the same clothes you'll wear tomorrow. Heavy wool trousers, a cotton shirt already stained with rust and oil, and boots worn thin from walking the iron decks of ships under construction. The walk to the shipyard takes 20 minutes through streets that smell of coal smoke in the river. Other men walk beside you, silent mostly, all heading to the same place. The sky is beginning to lighten, but it's that gray Belfast light that never seems to fully arrive. You pass through the gates of Harland and Wolff, past the guards who nod without really seeing you, and into the yard proper. The Titanic rises before you like a steel mountain. Even now, 3 years into her construction, she still takes your breath away. Not because she's beautiful, though she will be someday, but because she's so impossibly large, so ambitious, that it seems impossible that men like you could build such a thing. Yet here you are, and here she is, growing taller and wider every day. You're a riveter, one of the catch boys who works with the rivet gangs. Your job is simple in theory, impossible in practice. When the rivet heater throws a red-hot rivet from his forge, you catch it with your tongs and place it perfectly in the hole drilled through the steel plates. Then you hold it steady while the riveter drives it home with his pneumatic hammer. Simple, except the rivets are thrown 20, 30, sometimes 40 feet through the air, glowing like falling stars. And they must be caught perfectly, positioned perfectly, held perfectly, or the whole operation fails. The morning starts with the lighting of the forges. You can smell the coal catching fire, hear the bellows beginning their steady wheeze. The rivet heaters are already at work, heating iron rods until they glow white hot, then shaping them into the rivets that will hold the ship together. These are not the steel rivets that will be used on most of the hull. These are iron rivets, softer, easier to work with, but requiring more skill to place correctly. You take your position on the scaffolding, 30 feet above the ground, 40 feet above the water when the tide is in. The steel deck beneath your feet vibrates with the work of hundreds of men. Hammer blows echo and re-echo off the hull until individual sounds become part of a larger rhythm, like standing inside a giant drum. The first rivet of the day comes flying toward you, spinning end over end, trailing sparks. You track it with your eyes, gauge its arc, and catch it cleanly with your tongs. The heat comes through the metal handles, not enough to burn, but enough to remind you what you're handling. You place the rivet in its hole, threading it through the 2 plates that will form part of the ship's side. The riveter steps forward with his hammer, a pneumatic tool that sounds like a machine gun when it fires. The hammer drives the rivet home in a series of rapid blows, each one sending vibrations up through your arms and into your bones. The hot iron spreads and flattens, forming a perfect seal between the plates. One rivet down, approximately 2,999 to go for your section alone. The rhythm establishes itself quickly. Heat, throw, catch, place, hammer. Heat, throw, catch, place, hammer. Your muscles remember the motion from yesterday, from the day before, from months of doing this same work. The rivet heater works with precision born of practice, heating each rivet to exactly the right temperature. Too cool and it won't spread properly. Too hot and it burns through your tongs. By mid-morning, your shoulders ache from holding the heavy tongs steady while the hammer does its work. The scaffolding sways slightly with each hammer blow, and you learn to brace yourself to become part of the structure itself. Around you, other rivet gangs work their own sections. The sound is overwhelming at first, but gradually your ears adjust until you can distinguish between different hammers, different rhythms, different stages of the work. The hull curves away beneath you, a steel landscape of plates and frames and temporary scaffolding. You can see other workers moving like ants across the surface, each one focused on their own small part of the massive project. Somewhere below, other men are working on the engine rooms, installing the enormous boilers that will power the ship. But here, on the hull, the work is more basic, more fundamental. You're building the skin that will keep the ocean out. The sun climbs higher, though you can barely tell through the haze of coal smoke and steam that hangs over the yard. The rivet heater's forge glows like a small sun, and the heat from it mingles with the warmth of your own exertion. Sweat begins to soak through your shirt, and you're grateful for the river breeze that occasionally finds its way through the maze of scaffolding and equipment. A rivet comes in high and fast, and you have to stretch to catch it, feeling the strain in your back and shoulders. The tongs are heavy, and after hours of use, they feel like they weigh twice what they did this morning. You place the rivet carefully, making sure it's perfectly aligned, and brace yourself for the hammer's assault. The work is dangerous in ways that you don't think about anymore. A missed catch means a red-hot rivet falling 40 feet to the deck below, or worse, into the water where it might hit someone working on a lower level. The scaffolding itself is temporary, held together with rope and prayer as much as proper engineering. Men have fallen. Men have been crushed by falling plates or struck by loose rivets. But you don't think about this as you work. You can't. The work requires complete focus, complete commitment to the rhythm. By noon, the whistle blows for dinner. You climb down from the scaffolding, your legs stiff from maintaining the same position for hours. The ground feels strange beneath your feet after the constant vibration of the steel deck. You find a place to sit in the shadow of the ship's hull, unwrap the sandwich you brought from home, and eat in silence with the other men. The size of the ship is more apparent from down here. The hull curves up and away from you, higher than some of the buildings in Belfast. It's hard to imagine this thing floating, let alone moving through the water under its own power. But you've seen ships launched before. You know that what seems impossible from the building dock becomes inevitable once the ship touches water. After dinner, it's back to the scaffolding, back to the rhythm of heat and throw and catch and hammer. Your hands are stiff from gripping the tongs, and the muscles in your forearms burn with fatigue. But the work continues. The ship won't build itself, and every rivet you place brings her one step closer to completion. The afternoon brings new challenges. The angle of the sun changes, creating shadows and glare that make it harder to track the flying rivets. Your eyes water from the smoke and the brightness of the heated metal. The rivet heater is tiring too, and his throws become less precise. You have to move more, stretch further, adjust your position constantly to make the catches. A rivet goes wide, beyond your reach, and clatters down through the scaffolding to the deck below. The heater curses, but it's not really anyone's fault. After 6 hours of throwing red-hot metal with precision, even the best heater will have off moments. You signal for the next rivet, and the rhythm resumes. The sound of the work changes throughout the day. In the morning, it's sharp and clear, metal ringing against metal with musical precision. By afternoon, it becomes more muffled, more complex, as the structure of the ship grows and creates new echoes and resonances. Your own breathing becomes part of the rhythm, time to the work, deep and steady and automatic. Another rivet gang is working the section next to yours, their rhythm slightly different from your own. Sometimes the two rhythms sync up, creating a brief moment of perfect harmony before drifting apart again. You know the men in that gang by sight, but you don't talk during work. The concentration required is too complete, the danger too real. As the day wears on, your movements become more automatic, more efficient. Your body learns the work in ways your mind can't quite grasp. The tongs become extensions of your hands. The weight and balance and heat of each rivet registers in your muscles before your brain has time to process it. This is how the work gets done, not through conscious thought, but through the accumulated wisdom of repetition. The sun begins to set behind the ship, creating long shadows across the yard. The rivet heater's forge glows brighter in the gathering dusk, and the heated rivets seem more brilliant against the darkening sky. Your back aches, your arms ache, your hands are cramped around the tongs, but still the work continues. Finally, the whistle blows for the end of the shift. You place your last rivet of the day, feeling the hammer drive it home with familiar violence. The rivet heater banks his forge, and the sudden quiet seems unnatural after 10 hours of constant noise. You climb down from the scaffolding one more time, your legs shaking with fatigue. The walk home takes longer than the walk to work. Your body is heavy with exhaustion, and your ears ring with the phantom sound of hammer blows. Other men walk beside you, all silent, all tired, all carrying the weight of another day's work in their bones. At home, you washing cold water from a basin, scrubbing the iron dust and sweat from your skin. The water turns gray, then black. Your wife has kept dinner warm, and you eat without talking much. The food tastes good, but you're too tired to really appreciate it. Later, lying in bed, you can still feel the vibration of the steel deck in your bones. You can still hear the rhythm of the hammers, the hiss of the forge, the calls of the rivet heaters. Tomorrow will bring more of the same, more rivets, more heat, more hammering. But tonight, you sleep the sleep of exhaustion, deep and dreamless, until the sound of hammers wakes you again at dawn. The next morning brings a change. You've been moved from the rivet gang to work as a rivet heater yourself. It's a promotion of sorts, more skilled work, better pay. But it also means longer hours and more responsibility. The rivet heater is the heart of the gang, the one who sets the rhythm, who determines the pace and quality of the work. Your forge is a small piece of hell brought to earth. Coal burns in a carefully maintained fire, hot enough to heat iron to white-hot temperatures, but not so hot that it burns away the metal itself. The bellows require constant attention, pumping air through the coals to maintain the perfect temperature. Too little air in the fire dies, too much and the heat becomes uncontrollable. You start your day before dawn, building up the fire from the banked coals left from yesterday. The first light of morning filters through the smoke and steam rising from forges across the yard. Other heaters are doing the same work, each one tending their own small fire, each one responsible for keeping their gang supplied with properly heated rivets. The iron rods arrive in bundles, cold and dark and unremarkable. But in your hands, under the heat of your forge, they become something else entirely. You take the first rod of the day, thrust it into the heart of the fire, and watch it begin to glow. First red, then orange, then yellow, then white hot and ready to shape. The transformation is almost magical. Cold, dead metal becomes something alive, something malleable, something that can be shaped and formed and made to serve. You pull the rod from the fire and quickly shape it into a rivet, hammering it on your anvil with quick, precise blows. The metal moves under your hammer like clay, taking the shape you give it. But shaping the rivet is only the beginning. Now you must heat it again, bringing it to exactly the right temperature for throwing. Too cool and it won't spread properly when the riveter drives it home. Too hot and it will burn through the catcher's tongs or be too soft to hold its shape. The temperature must be perfect, and you judge it by color alone, by the subtle differences in the glow of heated iron. The catcher takes his position on the scaffolding, 40 feet away and 30 feet up. The riveter stands ready with his pneumatic hammer. The success of their work depends entirely on your ability to heat the rivet properly and throw it accurately. No pressure at all, you grip the heated rivet with your tongs, feeling the heat radiate through the metal handles. The rivet glows like a small star, brilliant against the gray morning light. You gauge the distance, the wind, the angle of the throw. Then, with a motion practiced thousands of times, you fling the rivet in a high arc toward the catcher. The rivet spins end over end, trailing sparks like a comet. For a moment it seems impossibly beautiful. This small piece of transformed metal flying through the air with perfect precision. The catcher tracks its flight, positions his tongs, and catches it cleanly. Another successful throw. But there's no time to admire your work. The next rivet is already heating in the forge, and the one after that is waiting its turn. The rhythm of the work is relentless, driven by the needs of the construction schedule and the limitations of heated metal. A rivet can only stay hot for so long before it becomes useless. The timing must be perfect, every throw precisely calculated. Your world becomes very small and very focused. The forge, the pile of iron rods, the distant figure of the catcher on his scaffolding. Everything else fades away. The massive ship growing around you, the hundreds of other workers, the noise and chaos of the shipyard, all of it becomes background to the essential work of heating and throwing rivets. The fire must be fed constantly. Coal goes in, ash comes out. The bellows pump steadily, your legs working automatically to maintain the rhythm. Your right arm throws rivets, your left arm works the bellows. Your eyes monitor the color of the heated metal. Every part of your body is engaged in the work, every movement coordinated toward the single goal of keeping the rivet gang supplied. The heat from the forge is intense, even in the cool Belfast air. By mid-morning, your shirt is soaked with sweat, and your face feels sunburned from the radiant heat. The skin on your hands and arms darkens from the constant exposure to the forge's glow. You drink water constantly, but it never seems enough to replace what you lose to perspiration. A rivet comes out of the fire too hot, glowing white hot instead of the orange-red you need. You have to wait for it to cool slightly, watching the color change, judging the exact moment when it reaches the perfect temperature. The catcher waits patiently on his scaffolding, but you can feel the pressure of lost time. Every second the rivet cools brings it closer to being useless. The throw is perfect, a high arc that drops the rivet precisely into the catcher's tongs. He places it quickly, and the riveter drives it home with a rapid series of hammer blows. One more rivet in place, one small step closer to completing this section of the hull. As the day progresses, the work becomes more automatic, more instinctive. Your hands know the weight and feel of properly heated metal. Your eyes can judge temperature by color with precision that surprises even you. Your throwing arm finds its rhythm, and the rivets fly with consistent accuracy toward their target. But the physical demands of the work are enormous. The constant heat from the forge saps your strength. The repetitive motion of throwing begins to tell on your shoulder and back. Your legs ache from working the bellows for hours on end. The muscles in your throwing arm burn with the effort of hurling pound-and-a-half rivets 40 feet through the air with perfect precision. During the dinner break, you sit in whatever shade you can find, your body steaming in the cooler air. The other men in your gang eat their sandwiches in silence, all of them too tired to talk much. The catcher flexes his hands, working the stiffness out of fingers cramped from gripping heavy tongs. The riveter oils his pneumatic hammer, checking the air lines and making sure everything is ready for the afternoon's work. You look up at the section of hull you've been working on, trying to count the rivets you've heated and thrown today. But they blur together, each one identical to the last, each one a small part of the massive whole. Hundreds of rivets, thousands, tens of thousands still to go. The ship is so large, so complex, that your individual contribution seems almost insignificant. Yet you know that without your work, without the work of men like you, the ship could never be built. The afternoon brings new challenges. The wind picks up, making accurate throws more difficult. You have to adjust your aim constantly, compensating for gusts that can knock a rivet off course. The catcher signals when he's ready, and you time your throws to the brief moments when the wind dies down. A rivet goes wide, beyond the catcher's reach, and bounces off the scaffolding to fall into the water below. The sound of hot metal hitting cold water makes a sharp hiss that carries across the yard. You curse under your breath and reach for another iron rod. Missed throws are part of the work, but they still sting your professional pride. The forge requires constant attention. The fire must be kept at exactly the right temperature, the coal bed maintained at the proper depth, the airflow adjusted for changing conditions. It's as much art as science, a skill learned through years of experience and impossible to teach from books. Your throwing arm begins to tire in the late afternoon, and you have to concentrate harder to maintain accuracy. The distance seems to grow with each throw, the target smaller and more elusive. But the work must continue. The construction schedule waits for no one, and delays in one section affect the entire project. The sun sets behind the ship again, casting long shadows across the yard. Your forge glows brighter in the gathering darkness, and the heated rivets seem more brilliant against the evening sky. Other forges across the yard create pools of orange light, each one tended by a man like you, each one feeding the endless hunger of construction. The last rivet of the day glows in your tongs, ready for throwing. You gauge the distance one more time, feeling the familiar weight of the heated metal, the balance of the tongs in your hand. The throw is true, arcing through the darkening air to land perfectly in the catcher's grip. The riveter drives it home, and another day's work is complete. You bank the fire for tomorrow, covering the coals with ash to preserve the heat overnight. Your tools are cleaned and stored, ready for another day. The walk home is slow and painful, your body stiff from hours of repetitive motion and constant heat. At home, you strip off your sweat-soaked clothes and wash in cold water that feels like a blessing on your overheated skin. Your wife comments on how dark your face has become, tanned and weathered by the forge's heat. Your hands are permanently stained with iron dust and soot, the marks of your trade written in your skin. Dinner tastes good, but you're almost too tired to eat. The heat from the forge seems to have settled in your bones, and even the cool evening air doesn't provide much relief. You sit outside for a while, watching the stars appear one by one in the clear Belfast sky, trying to let the day's heat leach out of your body. In bed, you dream of flying rivets and glowing metal, of the endless rhythm of heat and throw and catch. Your throwing arm twitches in your sleep, practicing the motion that has become as natural as breathing. Tomorrow will bring more of the same, and the day after that, and the day after that until the ship is finished and ready for the sea. The rhythm of shipbuilding is seasonal, cyclical, like farming but with iron instead of crops. After months as a rivet heater, you're moved again, this time to work as a catcher. It's different work, requiring different skills, different muscles, different kinds of concentration. Where the heater controls the rhythm, the catcher must respond to it, must be ready at any moment to receive a piece of glowing metal thrown with incredible force across impossible distances. Your new position is on the scaffolding, 40 feet above the yard, 30 feet above the high tide line. The view from here is spectacular and terrifying in equal measure. You can see across the entire shipyard, across the Lagan River to the hills beyond Belfast. The city spreads out below you like a map, smoke rising from 1,000 chimneys, life going on in miniature while you work on this enormous project that seems to dwarf everything else. The scaffolding itself is a marvel of temporary engineering, a maze of wooden planks and iron poles that somehow supports the weight of dozens of workers and their tools. It creaks and sways in the wind, flexes under the impact of pneumatic hammers, vibrates with the rhythm of construction. Learning to trust it, to move confidently across its narrow walkways, takes time and courage. Your tools are simple but essential. Heavy iron tongs for catching and holding the hot rivets, designed to grip securely without crushing the heated metal. The handles are wrapped with leather for better grip and some protection from the heat. But after hours of use, that heat still finds its way through to your hands. The first rivet of the day comes flying toward you like a small comet, spinning end over end, trailing sparks in the morning light. You track its flight path, judge its speed and trajectory, position your tongs to intercept it at exactly the right moment. The catch is clean, the hot metal settling into the tongs with a satisfying click. But catching the rivet is only the beginning. Now you must place it precisely in the hole drilled through the steel plates, threading it through layers of metal that will form part of the ship's hull. The hole must be perfectly aligned, the rivet seated properly, or the whole operation fails. Your fingers work quickly, feeling for the alignment, making tiny adjustments until everything is perfect. The riveter steps forward with his pneumatic hammer, a tool that sounds like a machine gun when it fires. You hold the rivet steady while he drives it home, feeling the impact through the tongs, through your arms, through your entire body. The hot iron spreads and flattens, forming a permanent seal between the plates. One rivet down, thousands more to go. The work requires absolute concentration. A missed catch means a red-hot rivet falling 40 feet to the deck below, potentially injuring someone or starting a fire. A poorly placed rivet means wasted time and materials, delays in the construction schedule. The margin for error is essentially zero. Your position on the scaffolding gives you a unique perspective on the ship's construction. You can see how each section relates to the others, how the hull curves and flows from bow to stern. The ship is beginning to take shape now, no longer just a collection of steel plates but something that actually looks like a vessel. From your high perch, you can imagine how she'll look when she's finished, floating free in the water instead of cradled in this massive dry dock. The rivet heater below works at his forge, the fire glowing like a small sun in the morning light. You can see the heat shimmer rising from the coals, can smell the coal smoke mixed with the scent of hot iron. The rhythm of his work matches yours, heating and throwing precisely time to your catching and placing. It's a partnership that requires perfect coordination, built on trust and practice and the accumulated wisdom of repetition. A rivet comes in high and fast, and you have to stretch to reach it, feeling the scaffold sway under your shifting weight. The tongs are heavy, and after hours of use they feel like they weigh twice what they did this morning. But the catch is good, and you place the rivet quickly, efficiently, without conscious thought. The sound of construction echoes all around you. Pneumatic hammers chattering like machine guns, the ring of metal against metal, the hiss of steam from the engines that power the tools. Hundreds of men working hundreds of different jobs, all coordinated toward the single goal of building this ship. The noise is overwhelming at first, but gradually you learn to filter it, to pick out the sounds that matter to your work while letting the rest fade into background. The sun climbs higher, and the heat from the forge below mingles with the warmth of your own exertion. Despite the altitude, despite the river breeze, you're soon sweating from the physical demands of the work. Catching and placing rivets requires constant movement, constant adjustment, constant vigilance. Your muscles ache from maintaining awkward positions, from the weight of the tools, from the repetitive stress of the same motions performed thousands of times. By mid-morning, your hands are beginning to cramp around the tongs. The leather wrapping helps, but it can't completely insulate you from the heat and weight of the work. You flex your fingers during the brief pauses between rivets, trying to work out the stiffness, trying to maintain the dexterity you need for accurate placement. A rivet comes in low, nearly at the limit of your reach. You lean out over the scaffolding, feeling it bend under your weight, and just manage to make the catch. The rivet is perfectly heated, glowing the right color, ready for placement. But the angle is awkward, and it takes longer than usual to thread it through the holes in the steel plates. The riveter waits patiently while you work, his hammer ready. He's worked with catchers before, knows that rushing leads to mistakes. Mistakes lead to delays. Delays lead to lost pay for everyone. When you finally get the rivet positioned correctly, he drives it home with the usual rapid series of blows. The work is dangerous in ways both obvious and subtle. The obvious dangers are the hot rivets, the long falls, the heavy machinery. But there are subtler risks too. The constant vibration from the pneumatic hammers can damage your hearing over time. The metal dust in the air can settle in your lungs. The repetitive motions can wear out joints and tendons. Most of the men in the yard carry the marks of their trade in their bodies, scars and aches and disabilities that are the price of building ships. But there's also something deeply satisfying about the work. Each rivet you place makes the ship a little more real, a little more complete. You're not just catching pieces of hot metal. You're building something that will last for decades, something that will carry people across oceans, something that represents the absolute pinnacle of human engineering and ambition. The dinner whistle blows, and you climb down from the scaffolding with relief. The ground feels strange under your feet after hours of swaying platform work. Your legs are stiff, your back aches, your hands are cramped around the shape of the tongs. But there's also a sense of accomplishment, of work well done. You find a place to sit in the shadow of the ship's hull and unwrap your sandwich. The bread is a little stale, the cheese is nothing special, but after hours of physical labor, it tastes wonderful. Around you, other workers are doing the same thing, eating simple meals in whatever shade they can find, resting tired bodies before the afternoon's work begins. From ground level, the size of the ship is even more impressive. The hull curves up and away from you, higher than some of the buildings in Belfast. It's hard to believe that something so massive, so solid, so permanent-looking, will someday float on water. But you've seen ships launched before. Watch them slide down the ways and settle into their natural element with surprising grace. After dinner, it's back up the scaffolding for the afternoon shift. Your muscles remember the work, but they protest more loudly now. The tongs feel heavier. The rivets seem to come faster. The heat from below feels more intense. But the rhythm reasserts itself quickly, and soon you're back in the flow of catch and place and hammer. The afternoon brings new challenges. The wind picks up, making the scaffolding sway more noticeably, making accurate catches more difficult. You have to time your movements to the rhythm of the sway, catching rivets at the moment when the platform is most stable. It's like trying to thread a needle while riding a horse. A rivet comes in wide, beyond easy reach, and you have to stretch dangerously far to make the catch. The scaffold bends and creaks under your shifted weight, and for a moment you wonder if you're asking too much of the temporary structure. But it holds, and you make the catch, place the rivet, and hold it steady for the hammer. The sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, casting long shadows across the yard. Your position on the scaffolding gives you a perfect view of the sunset, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that echo the glow of the forges below. It's beautiful, but you don't have time to appreciate it. The work continues until the whistle blows, regardless of weather or light or the ache in your bones. The last rivet of the day glows in your tongs, hot enough to sear flesh but somehow comforting in its familiar weight and warmth. You place it carefully, feeling for the perfect alignment, making sure it's seated properly before the riveter drives it home. The hammer chatters its rapid rhythm, and another day's work is complete. Climbing down from the scaffolding for the last time today, you feel every one of your 38 years. Your body is stiff and sore. Your hands are cramped. Your back aches from bending and stretching and twisting to reach rivets thrown from impossible angles. But there's also satisfaction in the work, pride in the knowledge that you've done your job well, that the ship is a little closer to completion because of your efforts. The walk home takes longer than usual. Your legs are unsteady after hours on the swaying scaffold, and your balance feels off on solid ground. Other workers walk beside you, all of them showing the same signs of fatigue, all of them carrying the weight of another day's labor in their tired bodies. At home, you strip off your work clothes and wash in cold water that feels like a blessing on your overheated skin. Your wife comments on the new calluses on your palms, the permanent grip marks left by hours of clutching heavy tongs. Your hands are beginning to take on the shape of your tools, molded by repetitive use into instruments perfectly suited for their purpose. Dinner is simple but satisfying, fuel for another day's work. You eat without talking much, too tired for conversation, too focused on the food to make small talk. Outside, the sound of hammers continues from the night shift, men working by electric light to keep the construction on schedule. In bed, you can still feel the sway of the scaffolding, still hear the whistle of rivets flying through the air. Your catching arm twitches in your sleep, practicing the motions that have become as natural as breathing. Tomorrow will bring more of the same, and you'll be ready for it, tired but determined, one small part of the enormous effort to build the largest ship the world has ever seen. The seasons change slowly in Belfast, but the work continues regardless of weather. Rain turns the yard into a maze of mud and puddles, but it doesn't stop construction. Men work in oilskins and rubber boots, their tools slippery with moisture, their vision obscured by water running down their faces. The ship must be built, and weather is just another obstacle to overcome. You've been moved again, this time to work as a driller. It's skilled work, requiring precision and patience and a steady hand. Your job is to drill the holes through the steel plates where the rivets will be placed. Every hole must be perfectly positioned, perfectly sized, perfectly clean. A poorly drilled hole means a weak rivet joint, and a weak rivet joint means a potential failure in the ship's hull. Your tools are pneumatic drills powered by compressed air, heavy machines that require two hands to control and considerable strength to guide accurately. The drill bits are sharp as razors and hard as diamonds, designed to cut through steel like it was wood. But even with the best tools, drilling through inch-thick steel plates is slow, difficult work that demands complete concentration. The morning starts with checking your equipment. The air lines must be clear, the pressure adequate, the drill bits sharp and properly secured. A dull bit will bind in the steel, potentially breaking or causing the drill to jump and ruin the work. A clogged air line means no power to the drill. Everything must be perfect before the first hole is drilled. Your first hole of the day is marked with chalk, a small cross indicating exactly where the drill bit must penetrate the steel. The measurement must be precise to the fraction of an inch, or the rivet won't align properly with holes in the adjoining plates. You position the drill carefully, checking the angle, making sure the bit is perpendicular to the surface. The drill starts with a sharp hiss of compressed air, the bit spinning at incredible speed. As it contacts the steel, sparks fly in all directions, tiny fragments of metal heated to incandescence by the friction. The smell of hot metal fills the air, sharp and metallic, mixing with the oil used to lubricate the cutting process. The steel resists at first, as steel always does, but the drill bit is harder and sharper and spinning faster than the metal can withstand. Slowly, gradually, it begins to bite into the plate, carving a perfect circle through the iron. Metal shavings curl away from the bit like tiny steel ribbons, hot to the touch and sharp enough to cut unwary fingers. The pressure required to drive the drill through the steel is enormous. Your arms and shoulders strain against the resistance, fighting to keep the tool steady and true. The drill wants to wander, to follow the path of least resistance through the metal's grain structure. But you hold it firm, guiding it straight through the plate, maintaining the perfect angle that will ensure a clean, round hole. Halfway through the plate, the drill suddenly breaks free, the bit spinning freely in open air. You've punched through, created a perfect hole ready for a rivet. But the job isn't finished yet. The hole must be cleaned, deburred, checked for size and alignment. Metal shavings cling to the edges, and these must be removed or they'll interfere with the rivet placement. You withdraw the drill and examine your work. The hole is clean and round, exactly the right size for the rivets that will follow. The edges are sharp but free of burrs or rough spots that might weaken the joint. It's a good hole, one that will hold a rivet securely for the life of the ship. But this is only the first hole of thousands you'll drill today. The pattern is marked out across the steel plate in chalk, each mark representing another hole to be drilled, another perfect circle to be carved through the resistant metal. The work is repetitive but requires constant attention. A moment's inattention can result in a hole drilled in the wrong place, a costly mistake that might require replacing an entire plate. The pneumatic drill is loud, much louder than the hand tools used in earlier stages of construction. The compressed air hisses through the lines. The bit screams as it cuts through steel. The metal shavings rattle against nearby surfaces like metallic rain. After hours of this noise, your ears ring with phantom sounds, and you find yourself shouting to be heard over machinery that isn't running. Your next hole is more challenging, positioned near the edge of the plate where the steel is curved to follow the ship's hull. The angle is awkward, and you have to brace yourself against the scaffolding to maintain steady pressure on the drill. The curved surface wants to deflect the bit, sending it skittering across the steel instead of biting cleanly into the metal. But you've drilled hundreds of holes in curved surfaces, and your hands know how to compensate. You adjust the angle slightly, increase the pressure, and feel the bit finally catch and begin its slow journey through the steel. Sparks fly in a different pattern here, scattered by the curve of the hull, creating brief fireworks in the morning air. The work is physically demanding in ways that surprise you. The drill is heavy, and holding it steady for hours at a time strains muscles you didn't know you had. Your shoulders burn from fighting the tool's tendency to jump or wander. Your hands cramp around the grips, and your fingers go numb from the constant vibration. But there's also satisfaction in the precision of the work. Each hole you drill is exactly where it needs to be, exactly the size it needs to be, exactly perpendicular to the surface. The accumulation of perfect holes creates the pattern that will hold the ship together, the foundation for all the riveting work that will follow. By mid-morning, you've established a rhythm. Position the drill, check the alignment, start the air, apply pressure, guide the bit through the steel, withdraw and clean the hole, move to the next mark. Each step flows naturally into the next, muscle memory taking over from conscious thought. Your body learns the work faster than your mind, adapting to the weight and balance and vibration of the tools. The steel plates you're working on are part of the ship's side, destined to be far below the waterline when she's finally launched. The quality of your work here will determine whether the ocean stays where it belongs, outside the hull, or finds its way inside through poorly fitted joints. It's a responsibility that weighs on you. The knowledge that lives will depend on the precision of holes you drill today. A drill bit breaks, snapping off flush with the steel surface. It's bound to happen eventually. The tremendous forces involved in cutting through thick steel taking their toll on even the best tools. You curse under your breath and reach for a replacement, knowing that the broken bit will have to be drilled out carefully to avoid damaging the hole. The replacement bit is sharp and keen, cutting through the steel with renewed efficiency. But you can feel the difference in the drill's behavior, the way it responds to pressure and guidance. Each bit has its own personality, its own quirks and preferences. Learning to work with them is part of the skill of drilling, part of what separates an experienced driller from someone just starting the trade. The sun climbs higher, and the heat begins to build despite the October chill. The work generates its own warmth, your body heating up from the physical effort, the drill motor adding its own contribution to the rising temperature. Sweat begins to bead on your forehead, despite the cool breeze coming off the lagging river. Around you, other drillers work their own sections, each one focused on their part of the massive pattern that will eventually cover the entire hull. The sound of drilling fills the air, a constant background of hissing air and screaming metal and the rattle of steel shavings hitting the deck. It's industrial music, the sound of progress, the rhythm of construction. Your hands are beginning to show the permanent marks of your trade. Calluses form where the drill grips contact your palms, thick patches of hardened skin that protect against the constant vibration and pressure. Your fingers are stained with oil and metal dust, the creases in your skin outlined in black like geological maps of hard labor. A hole goes wrong, the bit wandering slightly as it passes through a hard spot in the steel. The hole is still usable, but it's not perfect, not exactly round, not precisely where it should be. It bothers you more than it should, this small imperfection in work that no one else will ever notice. But precision is a matter of professional pride, and each flawed hole feels like a personal failure. The dinner whistle brings welcome relief from the constant noise and vibration. You shut off the air to your drill and feel the sudden silence like a physical presence. Your ears ring, your hands tingle from the vibration, your shoulders ache from hours of fighting the tool's weight and resistance. You find a place to sit and eat your dinner, a simple meal of bread and cheese and cold tea. The food tastes good after hours of physical labor, and the rest feels like a luxury. Around you, other workers are doing the same thing, taking advantage of the brief break to rest tired muscles and prepare for the afternoon's work. The size of the project becomes apparent during these quiet moments. The ship stretches in both directions beyond easy sight, a steel mountain rising from the dry dock. Thousands of men are working on different parts of the construction, each one focused on their own small section, each one contributing to the enormous whole. Your drilling work is just one tiny part of the massive undertaking. But without it, nothing else can proceed. After dinner, it's back to the drilling. Your muscles remember the work, but they protest more loudly now. The drill feels heavier. The steel seems harder. The holes take longer to complete. But the afternoon rhythm establishes itself quickly, and soon you're back in the flow of position and drill and clean and move. The shadows grow longer as the day progresses, changing the light on your work, creating new patterns of brightness and shadow across the steel plates. The chalk marks that guide your drilling become harder to see in the changing light, and you have to lean closer, squint harder, work more slowly to maintain accuracy. A particularly difficult hole fights you every step of the way. The steel here is harder than usual, more resistant to the drill bit. You have to apply more pressure, use more air, take more time to work through the metal. The bit heats up from the extra friction, and you have to pause periodically to let it cool or risk dulling it prematurely. But eventually, the hole is complete, clean and round and perfectly positioned. You move on to the next mark, and the next, each one a small victory in the ongoing battle between human skill and resistant metal. The pattern grows slowly across the steel plate, each new hole bringing the section closer to completion. The wind picks up in the late afternoon, carrying with it the smell of coal smoke from the city and the salt tang of the nearby sea. The breeze provides some relief from the heat generated by your work, but it also carries metal dust and debris that gets in your eyes and makes precise work more difficult. Your drill bits are wearing down, becoming less sharp, less efficient with each hole. You change them more frequently now, knowing that a dull bit will bind in the steel and potentially break, causing delays and frustration. The replacement bits cut cleanly through the metal, restoring the efficiency of the work. As the sun begins to set, painting the western sky in shades of orange and red, you drill your last hole of the day. The bit cuts through the steel with the same precision as the first hole of the morning, despite your fatigue and the wear on your equipment. It's a good hole, straight and clean and exactly where it needs to be. You shut off the air to your drill for the last time today and begin the process of cleaning and storing your equipment. The bits must be cleaned and sharpened, the air lines drained and coiled, the drill itself wiped down and oiled to prevent rust. Tools are expensive, and taking care of them is part of the job. The walk home is slow and painful, your body stiff from hours of repetitive motion and constant vibration. Your hands shake slightly from the accumulated effects of operating the pneumatic drill, and your hearing feels muffled from the day's exposure to noise. But there's also satisfaction in the work, pride in the knowledge that you've done your part to build something extraordinary. At home, you wash the oil and metal dust from your hands and face, scrubbing at stains that seem to have penetrated your skin. Your wife comments on how the work is changing you, how your hands are becoming harder and more calloused, how your shoulders are growing broader from the physical demands of the job. Dinner is simple but nourishing, fuel for tomorrow's work. You eat slowly, appreciating the quiet after a day of constant noise, enjoying the simple pleasure of food and rest in the company of family. Outside, the night shift is beginning their work, the sound of construction continuing under electric lights. In bed, you can still feel the vibration of the drill in your hands, still hear the hiss of compressed air and the scream of metal being cut. Your body aches in new places, muscles strained by the unfamiliar demands of drilling work. But sleep comes easily, the deep rest of physical exhaustion, and you dream of perfect holes and sharp bits and steel plates yielding to human determination. Winter settles over Belfast like a cold, gray blanket. The wind off the Irish Sea cuts through your clothes no matter how many layers you wear, and the rain seems to find its way into every gap in the shipyard's makeshift shelters. But the work continues, must continue, if the ship is to be finished on schedule. You've been assigned to work as a plater now, one of the skilled men who shape and position the massive steel plates that form the ship's hull. It's heavy work, Dangerous work, requiring strength and skill and absolute precision. A misplaced plate can throw off the entire structure, requiring costly modifications and delays. The steel plates arrive at your workstation on railway cars, each one a rectangle of metal larger than most rooms, weighing several tons, and requiring careful handling to avoid damage or injury. They come from the rolling mills still warm from the forming process, the metal slightly soft and malleable, ready to be shaped to follow the curves of the ship's hull. Your tools are simple but effective. Heavy hammers for rough shaping, smaller hammers for detail work, measuring devices for ensuring accuracy, and heating torches for warming the metal when more dramatic shaping is required. But the most important tool is your eye, your ability to visualize how the flat plate must be shaped to fit perfectly into its designated place on the ship's structure. The morning starts with studying the plans, large sheets of paper covered with lines and numbers and notations that describe exactly how each plate must be shaped and positioned. The drawings are complex, showing the plate from multiple angles, indicating the precise curves and bends required to make it fit properly with its neighbors. Your first plate of the day is destined for a section of the hull near the waterline, where the ship's side curves inward to meet the bottom. It's a complex shape, requiring several different bends and curves to match the ship's contours exactly. The steel must be shaped gradually, carefully, working the metal slowly to avoid cracking or weakening. You begin by marking the plate with chalk, indicating where the major bends must occur. The measurements must be precise to the fraction of an inch, or the plate won't align properly with the surrounding structure. You check and double-check each mark, comparing it to the drawings, making sure everything is exactly right before you begin the actual shaping process. The steel is cold and hard, resistant to bending. You light your heating torch and begin warming the areas where the major bends will occur. The metal glows dull red as it heats, becoming more pliable, easier to work. But too much heat will weaken the steel, so you must warm it just enough to allow shaping without compromising its strength. With the metal properly heated, you begin the shaping process. Your hammer rings against the steel, each blow carefully placed to gradually bend the plate along the marked lines. The work is slow and methodical, requiring constant attention to ensure the bends are smooth and uniform. A sharp crease or uneven curve can create a weak point that might fail under stress. The plate begins to take shape under your hammer blows, the flat steel gradually conforming to the curves required by the ship's design. It's satisfying work, watching the resistant metal yield to your skill and persistence. Each blow of the hammer brings the plate closer to its final form, closer to becoming part of the ship's structure. But shaping the plate is only part of the job. Once it's properly formed, it must be positioned exactly in its designated place on the ship's hull. This requires the coordinated effort of several men, using cranes and winches and sheer physical strength to maneuver the heavy steel into position. The crane operators work with practiced precision, lifting the massive plate and swinging it slowly toward its position on the hull. You and your crew guide it into place, checking the alignment, making sure it fits properly against the adjoining plates. The tolerances are incredibly tight, measured in fractions of inches, and any error means starting over. The plate settles into position with a deep, metallic ring that echoes across the shipyard. It fits perfectly, the curves matching exactly with the ship's contours, the edges aligning precisely with the surrounding structure. Temporary clamps hold it in place while the drilling crews create the holes for the rivets that will make the attachment permanent. You step back to admire your work, this piece of flat steel that you've transformed into a complex curve that matches the ship's design exactly. It's one plate among thousands, but it's your plate, shaped by your skill and effort, positioned by your careful attention to detail. When the ship finally sails, This plate will be part of the barrier that keeps the ocean where it belongs. The work is physically demanding in ways that constant heavy lifting and precise positioning require. Your back aches from bending over the steel plates, checking alignments, and making adjustments. Your arms and shoulders burn from swinging the heavy hammers hour after hour. Your hands are calloused and scarred from handling rough steel and sharp edges. But there's also deep satisfaction in the work. Each plate you shape and position makes the ship more complete, more real. You can see the progress daily, the hull growing taller and more ship-like as each new section is added. Your individual contribution is visible, permanent, part of something that will outlast your own lifetime. The winter weather makes the work more challenging. Rain turns the steel surfaces slippery and dangerous. Wind threatens to blow plates out of position during the delicate process of installation. Cold makes the metal more brittle, more likely to crack if worked too aggressively. You and your crew must adapt constantly to changing conditions. A plate comes out of the shaping process with a slight imperfection, a small area where the curve isn't quite right. It's a minor flaw, probably not visible to anyone else, but it bothers you. You reheat the section and work it again with careful hammer blows, gradually smoothing out the irregularity until the curve is perfect. The dinner break provides welcome relief from the physical demands of the work. You sit with the other platers in whatever shelter you can find, eating simple food and resting tired muscles. The conversation is mostly about work, discussing the challenges of particular plates, sharing techniques for difficult shaping operations, comparing notes on the best ways to achieve difficult curves. From your position working on the hull, you can see the other trades at work around you. Riveters are installing the plates you shaped yesterday, their pneumatic hammers chattering constantly. Drillers are preparing the holes for tomorrow's rivets. Electricians are beginning to install the wiring that will light the ship's interior. Each trade depends on the others, each one contributing to the massive coordinated effort. The afternoon brings a particularly challenging plate, one that requires multiple compound curves to fit into a complex section of the hull near the bow. The shape is difficult to visualize from the drawings, requiring you to work slowly and carefully, checking the fit constantly as you shape the metal. You heat and hammer, gradually working the steel into the required shape. The plate resists your efforts, the metal seeming to have its own ideas about how it should be shaped. But patience and skill eventually overcome the steel's resistance, and the plate begins to take on the complex curves required by the design. The fitting process is even more challenging than the shaping. The plate must slide into a tight space between existing structure, aligning perfectly with multiple adjoining surfaces. It takes several attempts to get it right, lifting and positioning and adjusting until everything fits exactly as it should. When the plate finally settles into its proper position, there's a moment of satisfaction that makes all the effort worthwhile. Another piece of the puzzle is in place, another section of the hull complete, another step closer to finishing this enormous undertaking. The sun sets early in the winter sky, casting long shadows across the shipyard. The electric lights come on, illuminating the work areas with harsh, white light that creates deep shadows and makes detailed work more difficult. But the construction continues, men working in shifts around the clock to maintain the demanding schedule. Your last plate of the day is a relatively simple one, requiring only minor shaping to fit into a straight section of the hull. After the complexity of the afternoon's work, it feels almost easy. The steel yields readily to your hammer, taking the required shape quickly and cleanly. You clean and store your tools, preparing them for tomorrow's work. The hammers must be checked for damage, the heating torches refueled and properly shut down, the measuring devices cleaned and calibrated. Good tools are essential for good work, and taking care of them is part of the professional pride that drives skilled craftsmen. The walk home is slow and cold, The December wind cutting through your work clothes despite the warmth you've built up from the day's labor. Your muscles are stiff and sore, your hands cramped from gripping tools, your back aching from bending over steel plates all day. At home, you strip off your work clothes and wash in water that feels wonderfully warm after the cold of the shipyard. Your wife comments on the new scars on your hands and arms, the inevitable result of working with sharp steel edges and heavy plates. The marks of your trade are written in your skin, permanent reminders of the work you do. Dinner tastes especially good after a day of physical labor in the cold. The warmth of the food and the comfort of home provide a sharp contrast to the harsh conditions of the shipyard. You eat slowly, savoring both the food and the rest, building up strength for tomorrow's challenges. In bed, you think about the ship taking shape under your hands and the hands of thousands of other workers. Each day brings visible progress, the hull growing taller and more complete, the massive project moving steadily toward completion. Your individual contribution is small but essential, one part of the enormous collaborative effort to build something unprecedented in human history. Sleep comes easily, the deep rest of physical exhaustion. You dream of shaped steel and perfect curves, of plates fitting together with precision, of a ship that will soon float free and carry passengers safely across the ocean. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new plates to shape and fit, new opportunities to contribute your skill and effort to the great work. Spring comes slowly to Belfast, but when it arrives, it brings renewed energy to the shipyard. The harsh winter is behind you now, and the longer days and warmer weather make the work more bearable. The ship has grown enormous over the winter months, her hull towering above the dry dock like a steel cliff, her superstructure beginning to take shape as the interior work progresses. You've been reassigned again, this time to work as a shipwright, one of the skilled carpenters who create the wooden structures inside the steel hull. It's a different kind of work from what you've been doing, requiring different tools and different skills, but no less important to the overall project. The ship may be made of steel, but wood is still essential for comfort and functionality in the living spaces. Your workshop is located in one of the large sheds near the dry dock, a space filled with the sounds and smells of traditional woodworking. The air is thick with sawdust and the scent of pine and oak and mahogany. Hand tools hang on the walls in orderly rows, each one designed for a specific purpose, each one honed to perfection by years of careful use. The wood you work with comes from forests around the world. Oak from England for strength and durability, pine from Scandinavia for lightness and workability, mahogany from South America for beauty and resistance to moisture. Each type of wood has its own characteristics, its own strengths and weaknesses, its own personality that must be understood and respected. Your first project is creating the framework for the first-class staterooms, the luxury accommodations that will house the ship's wealthiest passengers. The plans call for elaborate woodwork, complex joinery, and finishes that would be at home in the finest hotels on land. It's exacting work, requiring precision and skill and infinite patience. You begin by selecting the lumber, examining each board for grain patterns, checking for knots or defects that might compromise the finished work. The wood must be perfect, or nearly so, suitable for the high standards expected in first-class accommodations. You run your hands along the boards, feeling for irregularities, checking the moisture content, ensuring that each piece is ready for the work ahead. The first cuts are the most important, establishing the dimensions and angles that will determine how all the subsequent pieces fit together. You measure twice, then measure again before making any cuts. A mistake here will cascade through the entire project, requiring extensive rework or scrapping of expensive materials. Your saw bites into the wood with a satisfying whisper, the sharp teeth cutting cleanly through the grain. Wood shavings curl away from the blade, each one a tiny spiral of aromatic timber. The cut is straight and true, exactly where it needs to be, ready for the next step in the construction process. The joinery work is complex, requiring precise fitting of multiple pieces to create strong, permanent connections without visible fasteners. Mortise and tenon joints, dovetails, finger joints, each one cut by hand to tolerances measured in fractions of inches. The work is slow and methodical, requiring constant attention to detail and absolute precision. You work mostly by feel now, your hands guiding the tools with the unconscious skill that comes from years of practice. The chisel moves exactly where it needs to go, removing tiny shavings of wood with each careful stroke. The plane glides smoothly across the surface, leaving behind a finish as smooth as silk. The smell of the wood changes as you work it, the natural oils and resins released by cutting and shaping. Oak has a sharp, clean scent. Pine smells of resin and forests. Mahogany carries hints of exotic places and tropical sunshine. Each type of wood has its own aromatic signature, and you've learned to identify them with your eyes closed. A piece of trim requires a complex curve, following the lines of the ship's structure while maintaining the elegant proportions called for in the design. You steam the wood to make it pliable, then slowly bend it around a form, working gradually to avoid splitting or breaking. The wood resists at first, then gradually yields to pressure, taking on the required shape. The work is quieter than what you've been doing, more contemplative. Instead of the constant noise of hammers and drills and pneumatic tools, the sounds here are gentler. The whisper of saws cutting wood, the soft thwack of chisels being tapped by mallets, the rustle of shavings falling to the floor. It's a peaceful environment, conducive to careful, precise work, but the standards are no less demanding. Every piece must fit perfectly with its neighbors. Every joint must be tight and strong. Every surface must be smooth and ready for finishing. The passengers who will occupy these rooms are paying enormous sums for their accommodations, and they expect perfection in every detail. You work on a complex piece of molding, following a profile that requires multiple cuts and careful shaping. The wood is expensive mahogany, imported at great cost from South America, and there's no room for error. Each cut must be perfect, each curve exactly right, each surface perfectly smooth. The morning passes quickly in the focused concentration that fine woodworking requires. Your hands move with practiced precision, your eyes automatically checking every detail, your mind calculating angles and measurements and proportions. The work demands complete attention, leaving no room for distraction or careless mistakes. By dinner time, you've completed several pieces of the complex framework, each one fitted and ready for installation. The joints are tight and strong, the surface is smooth and ready for finishing. It's satisfying work, seeing the individual pieces come together to form something beautiful and functional. The afternoon brings more complex challenges. A section of paneling requires careful matching of wood grain, creating a seamless appearance across multiple boards. You select each piece carefully, arranging and rearranging them until the grain patterns flow naturally from one board to the next. The cutting and fitting is exacting work, requiring tiny adjustments to achieve perfect alignment. Each piece must fit exactly with its neighbors, with no visible gaps or irregularities. The tolerances are incredibly tight, measured in thousandths of inches, and achieving them requires both skill and patience. As the piece takes shape, you can envision how it will look when it's installed in the ship, how it will contribute to the overall atmosphere of luxury and elegance that the designers have planned. Your work will be seen and appreciated by passengers from around the world, a permanent testament to your skill and craftsmanship. The wood responds to your tools like a living thing, yielding to skillful pressure, revealing its hidden beauty as you work. The grain patterns emerge as you plane the surfaces, creating natural artwork that no human hand could duplicate. Each board is unique, each piece of work one of a kind. A particularly challenging joint requires multiple angles and compound cuts, testing your skills and patience. You work slowly and carefully, checking and rechecking each cut, dry fitting the pieces repeatedly before committing to the final assembly. When the joint finally comes together, it fits perfectly, as if the pieces were always meant to be joined. The sun begins to set as you work on your last project of the day, a piece of decorative trim that will frame a doorway in one of the luxury suites. The work is intricate, requiring careful attention to proportion and detail. Each curve must flow naturally into the next, creating a harmonious whole that pleases the eye and complements the room's overall design. Your tools move with practiced ease, guided by hands that have learned their craft through years of patient practice. The wood yields to your skill, taking on the complex shapes required by the design. Shavings fall to the floor in delicate curls, each one a tiny work of art in its own right. The finished piece is beautiful, a testament to both your skill and the natural beauty of the wood. When it's installed in the ship, it will be admired by passengers who have no idea of the hours of careful work that went into its creation. But you'll know, and that knowledge brings its own satisfaction. You clean and store your tools at the end of the day, preparing them for tomorrow's work. Each tool must be properly maintained, kept sharp and clean and ready for use. Good tools are essential for good work, and taking care of them is part of the craftsman's responsibility. The walk home is pleasant in the mild spring evening, a welcome contrast to the harsh winter weather you've endured for months. The air is soft and warm, carrying hints of growing things and the promise of better weather to come. Other workers walk beside you, all heading home after another day's contribution to the great project. At home, you wash the sawdust from your hands and hair, enjoying the smell of soap and clean water after a day of working with aromatic woods. Your wife comments on how different you seem when you come home from the carpentry work, calmer and more peaceful than when you were doing the heavier construction work. Dinner is a celebration of the coming of spring, with fresh vegetables and the first fruits of the season. The food tastes wonderful after a day of concentrated work, and the conversation flows easily in the relaxed atmosphere of home. Outside, the longer days extend the feeling of possibility, of progress toward completion of the great ship. In bed, you think about the wood you shaped today, the joints you cut, the pieces that will soon be installed in the ship's elegant interior. Your work is becoming part of something beautiful and functional, contributing to the comfort and pleasure of future passengers. It's satisfying work, creative work, the kind of craftsmanship that will be appreciated for decades to come. Sleep comes easily, filled with dreams of beautiful wood and perfect joints, of elegant interiors and satisfied passengers. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new pieces to create, new opportunities to contribute your skill and artistry to the magnificent vessel taking shape in the Belfast shipyard. Summer arrives with unusual warmth, and the shipyard becomes a place of constant activity and barely contained chaos. The ship is nearing completion now, her hull finished and her superstructure rising majestically above the dry dock. Thousands of workers swarm over her like ants, each one focused on their particular specialty, each one racing to complete their part of the massive undertaking on schedule. You've been moved to the engine room, assigned to work as a fitter, one of the skilled mechanics responsible for installing and aligning the enormous machinery that will power the ship. It's precision work of the highest order, requiring skills learned through years of apprenticeship and practice. The engines are the heart of the ship, and they must be perfect or nothing else matters. The engine room is a cathedral of steel and iron, a vast space filled with machinery of incredible size and complexity. The reciprocating engines tower 3 stories high, their massive cylinders and connecting rods gleaming with oil and precision. The turbine generators hum with barely contained power, ready to convert steam into the electricity that will light the ship and power her auxiliary systems. Your tools are different from those used in other parts of the ship. Precision measuring instruments calibrated to thousandths of an inch. Specialized wrenches and fitting tools designed for working in cramped spaces around massive machinery. And alignment devices that can detect the tiniest variations from perfect positioning. The morning starts with studying the engineering drawings, complex diagrams that show every detail of the engine installations. The specifications are incredibly precise, calling for alignments accurate to fractions of degrees and clearances measured in thousandths of inches. There's no room for approximation or good enough in engine work. Everything must be exactly right. Your first task is aligning one of the massive reciprocating engines, ensuring that all the moving parts operate smoothly and efficiently. The engine block weighs several tons and must be positioned with mathematical precision relative to the propeller shaft and the ship's center line. A misalignment of even a few thousandths of an inch can cause vibration, inefficiency, or catastrophic failure. You begin by checking the foundation, using precision levels and measuring devices to ensure that the mounting surface is perfectly flat and properly positioned. Any irregularities must be corrected by shimming or machining, building up low spots or reducing high ones until the surface meets the exacting specifications. The engine block itself is a masterpiece of precision engineering. Its surfaces machined to tolerances that would have been impossible just a few years ago. Every bearing surface is perfectly smooth, every mounting point exactly where it should be, every clearance calculated to provide maximum efficiency and reliability. Moving the massive block into position requires the coordinated effort of several men operating cranes and hoists. The work is slow and careful, each adjustment measured and checked before proceeding to the next step. The weight of the machinery makes every movement potentially dangerous, and one wrong move could result in serious injury or expensive damage. But gradually, patiently, the engine settles into its proper position. The mounting bolts slide home perfectly. The alignment checks out exactly, and another piece of the ship's power plant is ready for operation. It's satisfying work, seeing the massive machinery take its proper place in the carefully orchestrated symphony of the engine room. The work is mentally demanding in ways that physical labor is not. Every measurement must be perfect, every calculation double-checked, every specification met exactly. Your mind must stay sharp and focused throughout long days of precise work, maintaining concentration even when fatigue sets in. A connecting rod requires adjustment. Its bearing surface is machined to provide exactly the right clearance for the moving parts. You work with files and scrapers, removing metal a few thousandths of an inch at a time, checking your progress constantly with precision gauges. The work is slow and methodical, requiring infinite patience and absolute precision. The engine room is hot. Despite the early morning hour, the summer sun beats down on the steel hull, and the heat builds up in the enclosed space. Steam from the boiler tests adds to the temperature, and the close quarters around the machinery trap the heat and make working conditions difficult. But the work must continue, regardless of comfort. The ship's completion depends on getting the engines installed and tested, and there's no time for delays. You work steadily through the heat, taking frequent breaks for water and rest, but always returning to the exacting demands of precision machinery. A turbine housing requires perfect alignment with its mounting base, the tolerance specified as plus or minus 0.02 of an inch. You use specialized alignment tools, checking and rechecking the measurements, making tiny adjustments until everything is exactly right. When the final check confirms perfect alignment, There's a moment of satisfaction that makes all the careful work worthwhile. The complexity of the machinery is overwhelming at first, but gradually you begin to understand how all the pieces fit together, how each component contributes to the overall function of the power plant. The reciprocating engines convert steam pressure into rotating motion. The turbines extract additional power from the exhaust steam. The generators convert mechanical power into electricity. It's an elegant system, designed by the best engineers in the world and built to the highest standards of precision and reliability. Your hands are becoming more sensitive to the minute variations that indicate proper or improper fits. You can feel clearances of a few thousandths of an inch, detect slight misalignments that measuring instruments might miss. It's a skill that comes only with experience, the accumulated wisdom of handling precision machinery day after day. The dinner break provides welcome relief from the heat and concentration of the engine room. You find a place in the shade and eat your simple meal, appreciating the brief respite from the demanding work. Around you, other fitters are doing the same thing, all of them showing the effects of working in the challenging conditions of the engine room. The afternoon brings even more complex work, installing the control systems that will allow the engineers to operate the massive machinery safely and efficiently. The controls must be positioned exactly right, their linkages adjusted to provide precise response to the operator's commands. A poorly adjusted control can make the difference between efficient operation and dangerous malfunction. You work on a throttle linkage, adjusting the tension in the control rods with the precision of a watchmaker. The linkage must respond smoothly, without hesitation or slack, transmitting the engineer's commands from the control platform to the massive steam valves that regulate the flow of power to the engines. You test the movement again and again, tightening a nut here, loosening a bolt there, until the motion is fluid and exact. Around you, the engine room hums with activity. Fitters, machinists, and electricians move through the narrow walkways between the towering machinery, each one focused on their task. The air is thick with the scent of oil and hot metal, the constant background noise of tools and shouted instructions echoing off the steel walls. It's a world of iron and steam, of precision and brute force, and you are part of it now. A supervisor stops by to inspect your work. He checks the alignment, tests the movement of the linkage, and nods in approval. "Good work," he says simply, and moves on. It's a small thing, a few words, but it means something. In a place like this, praise is rare and earned. The afternoon wears on, the heat building in the confined space. You wipe sweat from your brow with an oily rag and take a moment to drink from your canteen. The water is warm, but it helps. You glance up at the overhead cranes, watching as they lower another section of piping into place. The coordination required is immense. Every piece must fit perfectly, every connection sealed tight against the pressure of live steam. Later, you assist in the installation of a condenser unit, guiding the massive component into its cradle with the help of a team of riggers. The tolerances are tight, the space limited, and the weight unforgiving. But the work goes smoothly, the unit settling into place with a deep metallic thud that reverberates through the deck. As the sun begins to set outside, the electric lights flicker on in the engine room, casting long shadows across the machinery. The day's work is nearly done, but there's one more task to complete. A final inspection of the port engine's valve gear. You move carefully through the narrow spaces, checking each connection, each bearing, each bolt. Everything must be perfect. When the whistle finally blows, you feel the fatigue settle into your bones. Your hands are black with grease, your clothes soaked with sweat, but there's a quiet pride in your chest. The engines are coming to life, piece by piece, and you've helped make it happen. The walk home is slow, your boots heavy on the cobblestones. The summer air is still warm, the sky streaked with the last light of day. At home, you wash in silence, the water turning dark with the grime of the engine room. Your wife serves dinner, and you eat gratefully, the food tasting better for the hunger earned by honest work. Later, lying in bed, you think of the engines, of the polished brass and gleaming steel, of the perfect fit of machine parts, of the power waiting to be unleashed. You close your eyes and hear the rhythm of the ship, not yet moving, but alive with potential. Tomorrow, you'll return to the engine room. There's still work to be done,